Question Everything was born out of a desire for curiosity, a love for people's stories, and a deep belief that through open and honest conversations, freedom can be found. Freedom from shame, from judgment, and from fear. So let's talk about the stuff we've been hiding from. Let's say the things we were told not to say. And let's ask the questions we've been wanting to ask, but have been too scared to. Because when we question everything, everything changes. Let's go.
Good afternoon, Diana.
Hi, Holly. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so much for joining me on Question Everything.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here because
Aww.
I too question everything. That's the life of an auditor. You're just professionally skeptical all the time.
I know it's like good news, bad news, right? You're like, is that the truth? And I know that about you. So Diana Greshtchuk is a amazing financial literacy coach. So I'll just give you a little bit of just open the floor for you to kind of introduce yourself and what you do.
Thank you. So yes, I am Diana Greshtchuk. I'm the CEO and founder of Fan Your Flame, which provides financial literacy coaching. I'm also touting myself as your best financial friend to my clients. I provide a forum for people to talk safely about money, which has historically been a taboo topic that so many people don't talk about, and it gets them in trouble. I am passionately committed to guiding entrepreneurs, businesses, individuals to hit a wide variety of financial goals, whatever it might be. I'm also a CPA, so I bring an actual financial acumen rooted in practical financial concepts, as well as a certified master mind magic practitioner and emotional intelligence practitioner. So it's also mindset work that I bring to the table to educate and empower my clients to step past what's limiting them mentally in order to hit goals like financial independence, transformation, and abundance.
Beautiful, beautiful. So a triple threat sounds like at least a triple threat. Well, I love that you said a forum to talk safely about money, right? And because we were always raised, it's very taboo. I think we still carry that. I love this conversation. I love talking about money. I love talking about financial freedom. I think so. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. But I think I just love that that's the forum you chose. So kudos to you for providing a much needed service out there.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to judge anybody. And really what it comes down to is it's about meeting my clients where they are, and wherever you are is as great a place to start as any. So, if you're in debt, if you're struggling to meet your expenses because you're not making enough income, if you have other things going on, I think it's very hard to talk about sometimes. So when someone can meet you where you are in a place of non-judgment, you feel safe to put it all on the table and then really get the change that you need from the inside out.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think, we talked today about this theme of this being, it's not about the money, right? Like it's never about the surface quote problem that we have, right? It's always underneath. And so I'd love, just in this next 30, 40 minutes, talking about some of those topics that you've probably seen people carry shame around or guilt, or that I've seen that, just to kind of like debunk some of this, talk through, normalize it, whether you are in a lot of debt or just getting out or no savings or whatever your situation is, that's okay. And you're not alone.
I think so many of us were taught not to talk about it. Like our parents, I don't know about you, they always told me about family business, and we don't talk about those things. And I love the latest Disney movie, Encanto. We don't talk about Bruno. Ask me about Bruno. Ask me about me. Let's talk about it.
Or I think, a lot of circumstances, even you saw negative conversations around money, right? Like a lot of fear-based, scarcity-based. I think it's, and you kind of just saw, at least for me, I didn't see like the money always felt very negatively charged, very panicky, very scarcity. And so why would you want to talk about that?
Which is so interesting. Well, I wonder why that carries that for you, Holly. What were your parents like with money?
Yes, my and it's been a long journey for me, right? I think it's probably the past 5 to 10 years that I feel like I have a better money mindset. But it was scarce. There was a lot of debt. There was a lot of overspending. And it was typically on one side of my parents. One was a saver, trying to make it work. The other was spending, right? So, and I noticed I was now, when I started having my own money, I was more of a saver, we can't spend that. we need to have everything done, a little bit of scarcity, a little bit of, yeah. So I think that's what I saw, because I didn't want that life of turmoil, maybe.
Yeah.
Turmoil
And I
feels a
think
little extreme, but
you're just like everybody out there, because we all inherit our money stories from our parents. We're like little tiny video cameras
oh
between
my
the
gosh,
ages of,
right.
3 and 7, and we're picking up everything. And for me, my parents were arguing about money, and it created beliefs in me that I don't ever want to worry about money. I don't want to argue with someone
Yeah.
about money. So I'm gonna work hard enough so that I never have to worry about money, which is a whole different trajectory. So many
Yeah.
people form their own personal money stories based on how their parents were with money when they were little.
Yeah.
And then they'd never change. That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what was, I'd love to know, because obviously you're now a financial literacy coach, working on abundance and mindset. So something shifted for you. What was that shift for you from what I heard was kind of going from, I want to never worry about money, so I'm going to like make money so I can be very responsible. You didn't say that. That's what kind of picked up on. What shifted for you to this place of like financial abundance? Yeah. What shifted for you?
That's a great question. It's been an interesting journey. For me, part of it was, having it drilled into me as a kid that I was going to go to college so that I could get a job. It led me down a path to choose a major and a career that I always thought would be employable, because I never wanted to worry about money. I didn't want to worry about being fired or in and out of jobs and not having cash flow. So I became an accountant. I became a CPA. And those are long hours. You don't take care of yourself. You work super hard. You're taught about the hustle. And it led down this path of pursuing, but without finding a lot of happiness there. So yeah, I started a 401k when it was available for me, when I got a job right out of college, and I have some retirement savings. But for example, it didn't make me happy. It didn't excite me. So the real shift for me, I think, happened when my mother passed away in 2020. My father passed away in 2013, and I'm so grateful for everything that they gave me, including my original money story and their arguments, because it taught me that actually, upon losing them, life is too short. And it changed how I looked at risk. It changed how I was willing to make investments. I became much more willing to invest in myself as an asset, which I hadn't been doing. And that was the shift.
Yeah. And that was 2020 for you?
Yep.
Yeah. And how interesting too, because I'd be curious if your parents if you did not see money, I hate negative or positive, but as a more stressful situation, if you would have made that shift, because you saw that piece and that awareness piece for you.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes, we all get on autopilot. We let our subconscious drive. We form these beliefs when we were very young, and they just keep us going on autopilot. And suddenly you hit 40 and you're like, oh man, what am I doing with my life? What's my legacy? What am I really doing here? What's my end game? Which is totally the identity crisis I had after my mom passed away most recently. So
yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm sure they're very proud of you to see you kind of take this new chapter in your life and run with it. It's very neat.
I like to hope so. I hope I make them proud.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so tell me, you had mentioned this, you started you made investment in yourself, right? I think that's something that is a very, very foreign concept, probably especially for women. So tell me, what was that insight for you to be like, hey, I can make financial investments and I can also invest in myself? And what made you actually do that?
Well, I'm going to get down and nerdy for like a minute, because in accounting,
love me a good pun. Down and nerdy, love it.
In accounting, it's double entry bookkeeping. And so there are debits and credits. And when you break down to the fundamentals of accounting, when you have something that is money going out, okay, so going out of my personal bank account, when money is going out, it's usually either an expense, or you're having the money go out to pay off a liability, or you're buying an asset. So the debit is usually either an expense or an asset, right? When you think about the double entry bookkeeping. And that led me to this line of thinking that, when I spend money, when money leaves my bank account, is it for an expense or is it for an investment? And I started changing how I looked at what I was spending my own money on. And it came down to this question of, is it a cost or is it an investment in myself? So if I'm spending money on professional development, am I pissing it away? Am I spending money without anything from it? Or am I investing in myself as an asset, let's say for a credential like the CPA that is going to earn me future cash flows? And so by changing how I'm looking at what I'm spending my money on, I realized that I too can be an asset. I can develop myself to generate future cash flows. And so I'll pause on the nerdy bit for a little bit and just get back to the mindset, and the shift around that is I'm worthy of being an asset. I'm worthy of being developed. So it comes down to this primal need of feeling worthy, when, you know, inherently we're all worthy, but somewhere along the way, we get lost in the hamster wheel rat race and we don't believe in ourselves as being worthy of investment. You know, people go to college, but even now, some of the statistics are shocking. Enrollments in colleges are down, you know, by about 5%, which can translate to about 1 million kids foregoing college to get jobs to be able to get by. And that's huge because those people are no longer investing in themselves as an asset.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's, I love that. And I love your, like, to your investment, to like, you're an asset to increase your future cash flow. Right. And investments don't always have to be for cash flow, but I love that for you worked, so that you're like, I either can invest in, you know, a stock, or I can invest in Diana's stock, and that's going to like be a much bigger payout.
And
like the
look at the
compound
market
investing.
these days. The market is nuts. Trying to go out there and find something that excites me as an investment, I'm really struggling in the marketplace. You know, the stocks are all over the place. They're volatile. Finding a company you can even believe in. And when I think down to just a basic company, when a company invests in an asset that's going to generate future cash flows, they might invest in equipment. If you have a t-shirt business, you might need a t-shirt printing machine. I don't know. I've never made t-shirts. But
I assume
you know,
so.
you have
I assume there's a
that
machine
asset to sell t-shirts to make money. And so it becomes shifting whatever it is you're putting your money into. Is it something that can generate future cash flows, which at its very core, that's an asset.
I love it. So kind of, that's such a great takeaway, right? For somebody watching, is like, how do you start to envision yourself as an asset? And what does it look like to invest in yourself as an asset, right? And that could be through coaching, that could be through programs, that could be through help. It could be through whatever it is.
Taking a vacation. Investing in your rest so that you can fill your cup to pour into others.
Well, and I love it. And I think you said the word worthy, which love. And I think, you know, we're talking about, this isn't about the money, right? All of our financial abundance or stress is never about like the actual cash. So what percentage of problems do you think people have financially that all come down to a worth issue at the core?
Oh, there's so many, but I would say when you look at a lot of the financial issues, it can break down to either worthiness, it can break down to shame, guilt, anxiety. There's a lot of emotions. I usually say, you know, managing money is 10% actually managing your money. It's not that hard. Go check some bank balances, you know, go check your credit card statements. The other 90% is managing your emotions around money. And at its very core, money is helping others. Not in and of itself, money doesn't provide safety, security. So I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but what money can buy for you, for your family, for your loved ones, what it can buy for you, a home, safety, security, that's what it can do. And so you're right. It's not about the money. It's never about the money. It's what is it about if it's not the money? Is it worthiness emotion? Is it shame, guilt, anxiety, financial stress, workplace trauma, wanting to succeed, and your definition of success? Is it can be so many things that underpin it. So it's so rarely about the money, but I'd say a lot of it breaks down to worthiness when it comes down to self-sabotage, getting into debt, ignoring your money, overspending, underspending. Which
then causes that shame, that guilt, that anxiety,
and it perpetuates a cycle. Absolutely.
Oh, that's that worthiness. So what would you say is the top thing you see in, you know, the clients that you work with, that they carry a lot of shame or guilt around? Like what piece of money?
Ooh, often it's how they're spending it. They're super
Mm.
judgmental about where
Mm-hmm.
and how they're spending it. Like, did I really need that?
Yeah.
But I wanted it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they kick themselves later. Whereas it's like, if you could change the way you make decisions about how you spend your money. And really, when you're making a decision to spend money or invest, what
Mm-hmm.
I like to do is tap into my future self. And I like to ask
Mm-hmm.
my future self, hey, is this money I'm going to spend today, is that going to help you or is that going to hurt you? Should I
Mm-hmm.
put this money into retirement or should I buy the latest iPhone? Arguably there are benefits to both. And so
Mm-hmm.
by tapping into my future self and asking what is going to be most aligned with your goals, maybe
Mm-hmm.
she'll tell me, this time it's retirement. And so then I
Yeah.
might still go out and get that iPhone and then I'm going to feel guilt about it
Yeah.
because I didn't listen to my future self too. So was I
Mm-hmm.
self-sabotaging? Was I not worthy to get to where I want to be? It's so many layers and factors. And the
Mm-hmm.
other thing I want to say about that is you can also bring forward any emotions that you're going to have around that. So let's just say in my analysis of tapping into my future self, what if I started allowing myself to feel now, how am I going to feel when I have that money for retirement versus how
Mm-hmm.
am I going to feel when I have the new iPhone? So
Mm-hmm.
am I going to feel safe and secure with a new iPhone? Probably not, but there might be feelings of shame and guilt. And so I'll have to talk to
Yeah.
myself as I'm making that decision. Diana, I'm going to invest in this new iPhone, but I don't want you to feel shame or guilt about it because you did need it to run your business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are conversations you can have with yourself
Mm-hmm.
while you're making decisions to minimize those feelings of guilt and shame
Yeah.
and to manage those emotions. And that's really what I bring is the emotional intelligence that's needed with money decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, like you said, and that's always an interesting trade-off, right? And I think we always know if we stop and listen, like we know what the right decision is. Because we can't like put off everything for the future. We can't do everything now. So it's like finding that, like you said, kind of trusting your future self and trusting yourself to kind of make that decision.
But I think there's a lot of people out there weighing similar decisions, and so many
Mm-hmm.
people are not prepared for retirement. The
Mm-hmm.
way, especially now with inflation, with the way the markets have
Mm-hmm.
been going, things are volatile and crazy a little bit right
Yeah.
now. And, people are opting to forego putting money into retirement savings, and they're hurting their future selves because they need that money now just to get by,
Mm-hmm.
just to
Yeah.
pay the rent. Some people don't even have health insurance or being able to go to the doctor. You should see the worthiness choices around choosing to go to the doctor or not and paying the doctor and medical bills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talk
And like
about
that's,
investing in yourself as an asset, like preventative care.
yeah. Well, I think we've talked before about this, about kind of like the privilege of finances, right? And how that, like, if you do have a health, that healthcare, that means, if you have healthcare through your employer, you already have an extra lot of money to use for other things, right? So what do you see? Tell me a little bit about your work and kind of the income inequality space. I know you're really passionate about that. Tell me about that.
Yeah, great question. I think I'm very active in the LGBTQ plus community. I'm on the
Mm-hmm.
board of directors for the Point Foundation, which offers scholarship and non-financial aided support to scholars that have been marginalized, AKA, kicked out of their homes and otherwise wouldn't get to go to college. And
Mm-hmm.
this foundation provides full ride and partial scholarships, and not just for LGBTQ plus, but also for BIPOC, which is Black,
Mm-hmm.
Indigenous, and people of color. And I think really the distribution of wealth in especially America is shocking. And it's really the minorities and the other 99% that don't have access to financial literacy tools. So trying to even that playing field is really what I get passionate about, because I want finances to be accessible to minorities, to marginalized communities, the
Mm-hmm.
outcasts, the forgotten, the underserved. Those are the people that need it the most. That single mom working 3 jobs, just trying to keep food on the table for her kids, trying to give the best life possible, but really struggling. And so, especially in the income space, I think we see a lot of minorities and marginalized folks. There's the gender pay gap. I don't know the latest statistic, but women make between 72 and 77 cents on the dollar compared to men. The amount of minorities on boards and leadership positions, you know, they refer to things like the glass ceiling. There's also, believe it or not, a bamboo ceiling. When I lived in Australia, a big part was the Asian community in Australia. And they called it the bamboo ceiling, where a lot of Asian race folks were not allowed to be, or not making it up to, boards, and that representation wasn't there. And so there's huge income disparity just around the demographics of what you look like when you enter the workforce, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and you know, what you know, is that, how do you work with clients on things like that? Or what's is there at the end, is it a worthiness as well? But it's there's also like a societal systemic oppression too, right? It's not just like, yes,
there's
it may have been like my beliefs, but there's also like, so they're just like crunched in here, right? So like, what do you see in that for those type of clients?
I think for those folks, it's very hard for them to invest in themselves, to take themselves above that rat race, to spend the money, to figure out, to up level, to upskill, change their scenario and change their trajectory. And so they stay in that cycle of working the minimum wage jobs, of the jobs that nobody wants, because at least it's bringing the money in. And as you said, there's systemic oppression that's happening there, and worthiness, but then there's also individualistic. So you and I talk about, you know, what we experienced as kids, and that's unique to each of us, but especially these communities, as you said, this added layer of worthiness. Am I really seeing myself mirrored in the politics, in what I'm seeing as government, in businesses? Am I seeing myself modeled as just other people showing me that I can do it? And I think a lot of people in these communities aren't seeing that, so they don't believe it's possible for themselves. Right. So they don't even try.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and it's so, you know, I think a lot of people aren't even, if you've not, you know, been around different, you know, groups than yourself, you're like, is that really a thing? And I remember, you know, my mom worked on a reservation as a teacher for like 12 to 15 years before she retired. Absolutely loved it. You know, and she would see these, you know, brilliant kids wanting to leave the reservation, get a scholarship, and it, you know, they would go off, and, you know, there's this instance, there was just this one kid where she was like, I hope that they don't come back. I hope that they don't come back, because they'll get back in, because they haven't seen anybody else do it like themselves, right? And they'll get sucked back in. And that's sure enough what happened in this situation, right? And so that pain of like, how do you, when the pressure of systemic oppression is on you, how do you even see that life can be different, right? And to get out, and your culture may not like do that as well. And so I think that that's something that if you do live a more privileged background, you may not understand, but that is like such a real life scenario for so many people.
I agree. And I try to get out there and be visible, but I'll tell you, with something like being a member of the LGBTQ plus community, like I might have short hair, I might have short fingernails, but it's not necessarily what's known as a visible minority, like the color of skin, like a like you know, other demographics that are out there, a disability, or differently abled, or neurodiverse. Some of those things can be very visible. And so for me, I try to be out there in the community and make myself visible. I mean, I don't have the lovely rainbow background that you have on right now, but I like to think I do my part.
Oh, in your heart you do, in your soul you do. So do you, and I mean, this is part of the thing, is asking like questions that maybe like not inappropriate, but like, do you try in some situations to be, with newer people, be outer than you would with other people, to like be visible? Like, is that a intentional action?
It's very intentional. And I'll tell you what, it terrifies me. Being visible is also one of those core things from, you know, being a little kid, not feeling seen, not feeling heard. And those can create trauma responses in your body. And so many of us shrink instead of being visible, being expansionary, being visible for other people to see. And that can come down to a worthiness issue too, around being willing to be seen. Am I worthy of being heard? What could I possibly say to these communities, because I'm just a white chick, like, you know? And so there's this ability to step outside yourself and realize there's something bigger than you. and that it's so important to bring those people with you, to be a leader, to be visible, and have them be on your team and come with you. I want to open the door for others behind me to let them all in. And just because, you know, I had a hard experience here, I really went through the ringer and earned my stripes there, it doesn't mean that other people should have to go through that pain and suffering just to get to the same place. If I can forge a path and blaze a trail and make it easier for the people that come behind me, yeah, I'm going to do that.
That's interesting. That's kind of like an intentional thing to like say, hey, not only am I here, I'm an out woman, and this is just to gain that visibility, which that takes a lot of courage, right? Because like you said, even visibility and just a platform when you're not a minority, right? When you're just being, is really uncomfortable, right? Like we know
Public
the work we
speaking
do,
is
like
a huge fear for everyone.
You and I are in a lot of groups together, and every single one is like, I hate being visible. Not every single one, but most people have some like crap that comes with them, right? And then to do it in a way that you can be ostracized, and there is still a stigma, and there is still judgment out there, like that takes a lot of courage. But for you to do it, or for me to do it, like shows other people like, hey, I can too.
And I'll tell you what, I do it without imposter syndrome too, which I think a lot of people can't say. I think a lot of folks, especially in these communities, they get elevated up, you know, like you mentioned that example from the reservation. They hope somebody gets out, and they float this person up with support to carry them out and lift them up. And then it becomes, oh my God, what am I doing here? I'm an imposter. I don't belong here. Oh my God, I need to go back. And that safety, that fear pulls them back. The statistics are really hard to break free.
Yeah. I mean, and I think I love we're having this conversation, right? Because that comes with that privilege of how do you break free. So then you're not going out for those jobs that maybe pay more, or you're not investing in yourself. And I'd love to just spend, a little bit more time talking about what the investment in self is, because I do think that when you've got bills, when you have insurance, when you have kids, when you have whatever it is in your life, like investing in yourself is not usually a top priority. So what for you are ways that you invest in yourself that maybe don't require a large capital?
Great question. One of my favorites, I invested in a maid, because part of what's important for me as an asset is my time, my energy, my attention. And I have 3 cats, just token lesbian right here. I have 3 cats.
With your 3 cats.
They love to mess up the house. They're furry, there's cat litter. So just having a maid come and help me with the chores and save me some of that time is one easy way that I invest in myself, because I'm worthy of having help. I have such little time on this earth. I don't want to spend it all sweeping after these goons.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're paying somebody else to do a role, right? You're like paying the money forward. Well, that's an interesting thing too to think about, as like, because like, what do you do when people invest in themselves? And you and I have done certifications, we do programs, we were at a retreat together, so we see that value. And it's interesting. So we're thinking about this worthiness investment. You had said like your time is really important. And what came to me is like, how they say like when you volunteer, you can give your like time, treasure, or talents. It's almost like, how do you invest in those 3 of yourself? That's like what kind of came to me, right? Like, how do you invest for your time? So maybe it's hiring a maid. How do you invest in your treasure? Maybe it's just financially, or it's saving for a trip or whatever, right? And then in your talents, how do you invest in your talents? That's where like coaching can come into play, or certification, or so like that just kind of came to me of like, what an interesting way to, when we're thinking about, especially for women, investing in ourselves, how do you do that? And it doesn't always require financial resources.
Yeah. So the resources, so I'm going to try to hit all 3 of them. So help me if I miss one. So as you mentioned, there's the time, right? So hiring a maid or someone to help you do the things that, I recently had to get my house tented. I live in California. There are termites. I'm not qualified to tent my house myself. So I have to pay for things that are an investment outside of, and I have to give, money for time spent to provide a service. And so I think in that regard, there are some things you have to do around investing time in yourself. And that can even just be as simple as grooming, like getting a haircut. That can come down to worthiness, and investing the time to take care of yourself and feel good about yourself, investing the time to meditate and change your inner environment, because that investment, let me tell you, pays off. And you know that too, girl. The treasure. So the financial side of things. So actually, I started investing in college. I just took money that I was making. I didn't inherit anything in college. And I took that money and opened up a brokerage account at a discount brokerage that charged very little in the way of trade commissions, and just started growing a portfolio. And I made money. I lost money. I've done that a few times now, over and over. I've lost tons of money. But I think the continuing to invest the money allows it to pay off, and you can use that money in the future. Know, that little brokerage account I started in college, I eventually used that to help put a down payment on my first home. And so saving for a rainy day and not, harming your future self at the expense of your current self is huge. And just taking that time to put your money away, let it grow until you're ready to use it on something you really want or need is huge. And then you said talents as well, right?
Talents.
The other thing, as you said, is I've actually worked recently to develop my own talents, because I've been a CPA. I've been a controller in a private equity firm now for going on 4 years. And I was on one trajectory of having a salaried job my entire life. But with recent professional development in the mindset space, in the emotional intelligence space, I was able to invest in myself and generate a new business and create a side hustle that creates other sources of income and a diverse portfolio of income coming into my world. So I not only have, a salaried position, I'm helping people, which for me, as having a personal mission to be an impact investor and invest for impact, that's really important to me, to be able to help others develop themselves into assets to then change their lives. That's the impact I want to make.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And like, it's this idea too, of like compound interest, right? So you invest a little of your time, which gives you more time to work on your treasures, which then helps you develop your talents. And it's just like, it just builds and builds and builds.
The great thing about compound interest is, guess what? The only secret to that is the sooner you start, the more you're going to make. Like if you do the math equations and you put money away at 25, 35, or 45, with compound interest, if you had just started 10 years before at 25, then you'd be making so much more money. Like they talk about the power of investing in Amazon in the 90s when I was in high school. What would that have done? So just setting aside a little bit to do that could have paid off in dividends and then some compounded exponentially. And I will tell you, you cannot accumulate wealth without investing. It is a plain and simple fact. You will never accumulate the amount of wealth you need to retire if you do not place money away into investment. That compound interest is real. The time value of money is real.
And I don't know if this is out of your purview, but if it is, you can be like, that's out of my purview, and we'll just carry on. What is like your, like, now, cause like, what did the Dow, did it go by 5% or something? Like, but the market is just insane right now. Right. And people are starting to get like a little panicky. Like, what is your thoughts on, like, do people, that are in their 30s, 40s that aren't retiring, anytime soon, did they just keep it in there? Like, what's your kind of perspective on what should we be doing for those that are invested?
For those that are invested right now, I think step one is don't check your account daily. Don't look at the daily fluctuations up and down, because you're going to have a heart attack. You're going to go insane. Watching that volatility is going to make you get cold feet, especially on days when there are big drops. On days when there are big gains, you might be tempted to throw more money into it. And so actually, one of the aspects that really excites me about financial literacy is behavioral finance, and the why behind the investing decisions that we make. And there's a level of, okay, don't check your accounts, don't deal with the volatility. The other thing is, remember, when you initially invested, hopefully you did so with a long-term strategy. You didn't just buy that hot stock because someone gave you a tip. The whole point of investing is buy low, sell high. So if you enter the market and you buy at whatever price and it goes down, that doesn't mean sell. It's not buy high, sell low. That's not the decision you want to make. So the other thing is remembering you're in this for the long term. If you're not anywhere near close to retirement and you don't need to pull that money out of your account to put a down payment on a house or to pay for a kid's, college, then leave that money in the market, let it rebound, let it come back.
Yeah. No, I think that's what you hear. And then I think a lot of people are kind of like, oh my gosh, this is very scary, but also, like you said, it's a long game. Nobody, hopefully people didn't get in it for a short-term payout.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, I chose to deploy some capital into the stock market in late 2020 and into 2021. And I will tell you, all the investments that I made then have all tanked. I'm taking a bath right now. So I don't even look at my account. But the thing is that I know that in the long term, the sooner you put money in the stock market, the better it is because of that compound interest and growth principle.
Yeah. And actually this compound interest in all areas of our life.
Yeah. And you're taking it to the next level of that investment in yourself for that qualification or certification could lead you to this new door that opened that never would have opened if you stayed on the old path, which then opens up the next door. And so it's all about like, what can you get out of this life? Where can you take it?
What's one of your kind of like big financial goals?
One of my big financial goals, I think, is to ultimately leave a legacy behind me. And what I really love is investing in female entrepreneurs. And so for me, eventually one day, I want to expand beyond my own investment portfolio of investing in bringing up other female entrepreneurs so that they can get a leg up. Because let me tell you, the statistics around the funding that women entrepreneurs receive compared to men, only 2 to 3% of the venture capital funding out there goes to women and women-led organizations. And so really changing the landscape, for example, in that space, in the LGBT leadership space, other minorities, and bringing that up is something I'm really passionate about. And I want it to extend beyond my own portfolio. I want others to invest and create pools and have actual channels for this to happen on a much larger scale.
So would that kind of be like your own venture capitalist group? Is that the right word?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think there's an arm of it being a foundation. I've drawn pictures, there's a not-for-profit foundation side where folks could donate and get tax benefits. There's an investment arm where I could create a fund of investments in entrepreneurs. And that fund, because it's not the typical market, it's going to have a different beta than the market. It's going to have different characteristics. It's not going to move in a correlation with a volatile market. And so having an investment arm would also be there. So there's asset management, there's foundation, but then there's also just encouraging those entrepreneurs as well, because as you know, as a student of doing the inner work, you can get $10,000 and you might get rich quick, but then you're going to lose it quickly if you don't know how to manage it. If you don't have support systems in place, if you don't have a sustainable mindset around what your end game is. So I think it's also bringing a level of mindset to that end, creating support networks and communities for these entrepreneurs to be successful.
Absolutely. And that's especially too important, probably, focusing on minority is like, there is that societal unworthiness, right? Or, family, like there could be issues. So it's like that mindset is so important. Because you see all the times, somebody hits the lottery and gets $1 million and they're bankrupt. And you're just like, it's so much like the money. Again, it's more than the money, right? Like you could have all the money in the world or no money in the world and, blow it all.
Yeah. Financial literacy is not a byproduct of wealth. Just because you get $1 million doesn't mean you're suddenly going to be smart with money tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's actually the other way around. Wealth is a byproduct of financial literacy. So just starting today and learning how to speak the language of finance, read it, write it, understand it. That to me is financial literacy. It's about your financial health being part of a holistic, intrinsic part of your overall well-being, and really considering the money story and the relationship along with just doing the investing, paying the bills, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Well, I know we talked a lot about kind of that worthiness, the investment, kind of this, privilege that kind of comes with financial. What would maybe be, if somebody's watching, kind of one takeaway you'd want to share as we kind of start to wrap things up?
What I'd really love for folks to do is, it's the first thing that I encourage my clients to do with me in a safe space, but get financially naked with yourself. Be super
Mm,
honest. Have,
mhm.
what some folks call a come to Jesus moment, but be
Yeah.
super honest with yourself about what is my state of affairs. Sit down, look at your bank balances, look at your credit card statements, look at all the outstanding debt,
Mhm.
where you're spending your money. Get an understanding of your current financial snapshot. And then
Yeah.
really the next step is think about the goals, the juicy vision that's taking you to your
Mm,
next step.
mhm.
Where do you want to end up? And then it's a matter of, okay, well, I know I'm at point A. I know I want to end up at point B. All right, what do I got to do now?
Mhm. Yeah.
That
I
will
love it.
allow
Get
you
financially
to think
naked.
about to mobilize. Yeah, get financially
Yeah. Woo! Yeah.
naked.
Because we don't do that a lot, right? It's like somebody all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I have $100 a month in charges if I'm XYZ. It's like, but that goes and it just that magnifies. And then we're not always honest with ourselves until we look at the black and white and the numbers are like, well, shit, that doesn't lie.
Yeah. Take yourself on a money date. I have money
Yeah.
dates where I update my financial snapshot on a
Mhm.
periodic basis and I recalibrate with myself. I celebrate wins. Oh, I didn't
Mm,
buy that iPhone. I actually did put some money away for
Yeah.
retirement. Hey, me.
Go future and current Diana. Go me. Go both of us. Well, tell me as I'm kind of wrapping up asking guests, what are, as we talk, first of all, thank you for sharing. This is great information. Maybe share, I'm going to share it in the notes, but how can people follow you, get a hold of you, learn more about what the work you do?
Absolutely. So you can find me online at Fan Your Flame. It's fan-your-flame.com. And I also have a great special page called disruptinginertia.com where people can go pick up a freebie. I have 4 webinars that you can choose from, and they're hour-long webinars just around education, financial literacy. There's stuff on the 80-20 principle around debt being your ally, because you wouldn't believe how many people are afraid to take on debt to invest
mm,
in themselves. Making smarter decisions, and then getting your financial house in order. So you can pick a freebie on disruptinginertia.com. And on my website for Fan Your Flame, you can see how to work with me. I offer one-on-one coaching. And this summer, I will be kicking off some group programming as well.
Awesome. Very cool. Great stuff. And I'll put that in the notes and everything. So before we wrap up, 2 questions for you. What are you currently questioning these days in your life or in society or just in general?
Ooh, what am I currently questioning? You know, I think I'm really questioning, and this is very relevant just, in the past week or so with the
Mm,
Supreme Court decision kind of leaking around abortion and abortion rights. I'm really questioning politics and
mm,
our elected officials being representative of the whole.
mm, That's a good one. Yeah. And then my last question would be, what is something that you questioned in your life that kind of changed everything for you?
Ah, something that changed everything that I questioned. I think I questioned, how good could this really get? After that
Ooh.
shift when my mom passed away, and I was like, what am I really doing here? What's my end game? Like, I could
Mm,
just drink myself to death tomorrow and no one's going to notice. But then I asked myself, well, how good could this get? What if I just went big? What would happen? What's the worst that could
mm.
happen?
Ooh, how good could this really get? That's great. I love that. I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that and write it, put it on a sticky note. Diana, thank you so much for sharing. Maybe you can come back on, we can talk debt, because that's something I think that a lot of people get very uncomfortable around. Which is the purpose of these conversations, right? To have the conversations that people can get uncomfortable around and that have this talks that people aren't talking about. So thank you for your
Absolutely.
time.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Ooh, yeah.
So for you,
Ooh.
if it's not about the money, what is it about?
Ooh. Agency of my
Say
life,
more.
freedom. It's about freedom to, and so agency, I guess, like not, I don't like to use the word control, but I think it's about freedom to do the things that I want to do, to have the experiences I want to have, to be with the people I want to be with, and whatever capacity that looks like. So, yeah,
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah. I know agency came out for me, which is interesting. I would have thought freedom, but I think a little bit of empowerment Control doesn't, not a
I
bad
think
control, but like a,
one of the key points of agency is knowing that you have all the power. Do you remember that movie? And I'm going to date myself here, from like the 80s, Willow, where Willow is this
yes.
little person and he's trying to become an understudy to like the sorcerer in the tribe or whatever.
Yeah.
The sorcerer asks this question, which of these fingers holds all the magic? And it's like, really, the answer was mine.
Ooh, yeah, mine. Yeah, that's interesting. Willow, I love good 80s movies reference.
Val Kilmer in the early days.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Well, you are wonderful. I look forward to speaking with you again. And I know that there are many people out there you're going to be able to serve, and I know that you will serve them powerfully. So thank you.